What happens when a beloved morning show host comes face to face with royal arrogance that knows no bounds? In just 45 seconds, one outrageous comment would expose the true character of a guest who thought his title made him untouchable, turning what should have been a friendly interview into television history's most shocking meltdown. The bright studio lights cast their usual warm glow across the familiar set as Kelly Ripa adjusted her notes one final time. Her signature smile was in place, the kind that had welcomed millions of viewers to their morning routine for years. Beside her, Mark Consuelos straightened his tie, both hosts radiating the professional charm that had made their show a household staple. "Good morning, everyone, and welcome back," Kelly began, her voice carrying that perfect blend of warmth and energy. "We have a very special guest joining us today. Please welcome Prince Harry." The audience erupted in polite applause as the red-headed figure strode onto the set. But something felt different from the moment he stepped into view, where guests usually offered a wave or a smile to the audience. He barely acknowledged their presence. His handshake with Kelly was brief, almost dismissive, and when Mark extended his hand, Harry seemed to hesitate before offering a limp grip. "Thank you for having me," Harry said, though his tone suggested he considered it more of a favor he was granting than an opportunity he was grateful for. Kelly, ever the professional, launched into her prepared questions with enthusiasm. "We're so excited to have you here. Your recent work has really captured people's attention. Tell us what inspired you to take on these new projects." Harry leaned back in his chair, a posture that seemed to claim ownership of not just his seat, but the entire studio. "Well, Kelly, I think people need to understand that when you come from my background, you have a responsibility. Not everyone can handle the pressure that comes with real leadership." Mark nodded politely, though his expression showed a flicker of confusion. "That's certainly true. Leadership takes many forms. How do you balance that responsibility with your personal life?" "Personal life?" Harry let out a short laugh that held no humor. "Mark, I don't think you understand what it means to have every decision you make affect millions of people. The choices I make today will be studied by historians tomorrow. That's not something most people in television can really grasp." The comment hung in the air like smoke from a fire that was just beginning to catch. Kelly's smile remained intact, but those who knew her well could see the slight tightening around her eyes. She had been in broadcasting long enough to recognize when a guest was testing boundaries. "Of course, we all face different challenges," she replied smoothly. "Speaking of challenges, you've been quite vocal about your views on media coverage. How do you think that's shaped public perception?" Harry's posture shifted, becoming even more commanding. "The media has never understood my position, Kelly. They're too busy chasing ratings and drama to report on what actually matters. Present company included, I imagine." The words hit the studio like a physical force. The audience, which had been quietly attentive, seemed to collectively hold its breath. Mark's eyebrows rose slightly, a barely contained reaction to what had just been said. Kelly's pen tapped once against her notepad, a tiny gesture that those who worked with her knew meant she was choosing her next words very carefully. "I see," Kelly said, her voice maintaining its professional tone despite the clear provocation. "Well, we certainly try to bring our viewers meaningful content along with the lighter moments that help start their day." "Lighter moments?" Harry repeated, as if tasting something unpleasant. "Yes, I suppose that's what passes for journalism these days. Dancing segments and cooking tips while the world faces real problems." Mark leaned forward slightly, his own smile becoming more forced. "Our show covers a wide range of topics. We've had everyone from world leaders to Nobel Prize winners as guests. We believe there's value in both informing and entertaining our audience." Harry waved a hand dismissively. "Entertainment. That's exactly my point. Everything has to be packaged as entertainment now. Even serious issues get turned into sound bites for people who can't focus long enough to understand complexity." The tension in the studio was becoming palpable. Camera operators glanced at each other uncertainly. The production crew, normally invisible in their professionalism, seemed frozen as they tried to process what was unfolding before their eyes. Kelly set down her pen with deliberate care. "Our viewers are actually quite engaged and intelligent. They appreciate when we can present important topics in an accessible way." "Accessible?" Harry said with a sneer that transformed his entire face. "Another word for dumbed down. But I suppose that's what happens when your career is built on reading from prompters and making small talk." The studio fell completely silent, except for the quiet hum of cameras and equipment. Even the audience seemed to understand that something had shifted irreversibly. Mark's jaw tightened, his hands gripping the arms of his chair as he processed the direct insult to his wife and their shared profession. "I think there might be some misunderstanding here," Mark said, his voice carefully controlled. Kelly and I have built our careers on connecting with people and bringing them information and joy during their morning routine. That's not something we take lightly." Harry turned to face Mark directly, his expression showing open disdain. "Joy," he repeated mockingly. "How noble of you! While I'm dealing with real issues that affect real people, you're worried about bringing joy to housewives and unemployed people watching television in the morning." The words struck like lightning. Kelly's composure, maintained through years of live television and countless difficult interviews, finally showed its first real crack. Her smile disappeared entirely, replaced by a look of genuine shock at the casual cruelty of the comment. "Excuse me?" she said, her voice dropping to a tone that anyone who knew her would recognize as dangerous. "You heard me clearly," Harry continued, apparently oblivious to the line he had just crossed. "I'm simply stating facts. My work has actual importance. What you do is babysitting for adults who need someone to tell them how to feel about their morning coffee." Mark stood up from his chair, his movement sudden enough that it caused Harry to actually look surprised for the first time since the interview began. The studio had transformed into something unrecognizable. What moments before had been a cheerful morning show set now felt like a courtroom where judgment was about to be passed. Mark's stance commanded attention from every person in the room, his usually relaxed demeanor replaced by something far more serious. "I think we need to take a step back here," Mark said, his voice carrying a weight that hadn't been there before. "You just insulted our audience, our profession, and frankly, millions of hardworking people who deserve better than your condescension." Harry remained seated, but his casual arrogance seemed to waver slightly in the face of Mark's controlled anger. "I'm simply being honest about the reality of the situation." "Honest?" Kelly's voice cut through the tension like a blade. She had found her footing again, and when she spoke, every word was measured and deliberate. "Let's talk about honesty. You came on our show, accepted our hospitality, and then used our platform to attack not just us, but the very people who make this show possible." The camera operators had recovered from their initial shock, and were now capturing every moment of what was clearly becoming television history. The audience sat in stunned silence, witnessing something that would be replayed and analyzed for years to come. Harry shifted uncomfortably for the first time, but his response showed he had learned nothing from the reactions around him. "I'm sorry if you can't handle criticism, but someone needs to point out that morning television has become meaningless fluff." "Meaningless fluff," Mark repeated, his voice rising slightly. "Kelly has been bringing important stories, interviews with world leaders, coverage of breaking news, and yes, moments of joy to millions of people for decades. She's built a career on treating everyone with respect and dignity, something you clearly know nothing about." The words hit their target. Harry's face flushed red, and for a moment, the mask of royal composure slipped completely. "Don't lecture me about respect. I was born into a position that demands respect. I don't have to earn it from television hosts." The sentence hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Even the production assistants, normally focused on their technical tasks, had stopped what they were doing to stare at the stage. The sheer arrogance of the statement seemed to physically impact everyone who heard it. Kelly stood up slowly, her movement deliberate and filled with purpose. When she spoke, her voice was steady but carried an unmistakable edge. "Born into a position that demands respect? Let me tell you something about respect. It's not something you inherit. It's something you earn through your actions, your words, and how you treat other people." "Here we go," Harry muttered, rolling his eyes in a gesture that only made his situation worse. "Another lecture from someone who doesn't understand what real responsibility looks like." Mark took a step closer to where Harry sat, his presence becoming more imposing by the second. "Real responsibility? You want to talk about real responsibility? Kelly gets up at 3 in the morning, every morning, to make sure millions of people start their day with accurate information and a moment of brightness. She's raised children, built a career, supported charities, and done it all while treating every single person she meets with kindness. And you," Kelly added, her eyes never leaving Harry's face, "walked into our studio and immediately started insulting everyone around you. Our crew, our audience, our profession. That's not leadership. That's not responsibility. That's just bad manners, wrapped up in expensive clothes." Harry's composure was cracking visibly now. His earlier smugness had transformed into something uglier, more desperate. "You don't know what you're talking about. Neither of you have any idea what it's like to carry the weight that I carry." "Weight?" Kelly's voice rose for the first time, her professional calm finally giving way to genuine anger. "You think you're the only person in the world with responsibilities, with pressure, with people counting on you?" Mark nodded, his support for his wife absolute. Every morning, Kelly carries the weight of being trusted by millions of families. They invite us into their homes, they trust us with their time, and they count on us to be honest, respectful, and genuine. That's real weight. The audience began to murmur, their shock giving way to something that sounded suspiciously like agreement with the hosts. Harry seemed to notice the shift in the room's energy, and it only made him more defensive. "Please," he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "Comparing morning television to actual public service is laughable. You read prompters and interview celebrities. I deal with matters of state, international relations, real issues that affect the world." Kelly's laugh was sharp and humorless. "Matters of state? International relations? You're not even a working member of the royal family anymore. You've spent more time complaining about your problems on television than solving any real-world issues." The comment landed like a physical blow. Harry's face went from red to white, his hands gripping the arms of his chair so tightly that his knuckles showed clearly against his skin. The studio fell completely silent again, everyone waiting to see how he would respond to such a direct challenge to his self-importance. "How dare you," Harry whispered, his voice shaking with rage. "How dare you question my service, my commitment, my sacrifices?" Mark stepped even closer, his voice dropping to a tone that somehow carried more menace than shouting would have. "Sacrifices? You want to talk about sacrifices?" Kelly has sacrificed sleep, privacy, and countless personal moments to build something meaningful. She's earned every single thing she has through hard work and treating people with dignity. Unlike some people who think their last name entitles them to respect they haven't earned, Kelly added, her words cutting through the air with surgical precision. Harry shot to his feet so quickly that his chair rolled backward several feet. His face was now completely flushed, his carefully maintained royal bearing replaced by something raw and uncontrolled. "You have no right to speak to me this way. Do you know who I am?" The question echoed through the studio, but instead of the intimidation Harry had clearly intended, it produced the opposite effect. A few audience members actually snickered, and the sound seemed to infuriate him even more. Mark's response was immediate and devastating. "Yes, we know exactly who you are. You're someone who came on our show and showed complete disrespect for everyone around you. Title or no title, that's unacceptable." The words struck Harry like a physical slap. His mouth opened and closed several times before any sound emerged. His practiced royal composure completely shattered. When he finally found his voice, what came out was pure venom. "Unacceptable? I'll tell you what's unacceptable," Harry snarled, his finger pointing accusingly at both hosts. "Two nobody television personalities thinking they can lecture me about anything? You're nothing but entertainers playing dress-up as journalists?" The studio gasped collectively. Even the camera operators, who had seen countless dramatic moments over the years, exchanged shocked glances. This wasn't just rude behavior anymore. This was a complete meltdown happening live on national television. Kelly's eyes blazed with an intensity that made everyone in the studio take notice. When she spoke, her voice was deadly calm. "Nobody television personalities? We've been trusted by millions of viewers every single day for years. We've interviewed presidents, Nobel laureates, authors, scientists, and yes, entertainers. Each one of them showed more class and respect in 5 minutes than you've managed in this entire interview." "Class?" Harry's voice cracked with hysteria. "You want to lecture me about class? I was raised in palaces while you were probably waiting tables somewhere, dreaming of getting on television." The personal attack hung in the air like poison gas. Mark's hands clenched into fists at his sides, his professional restraint being tested beyond any reasonable limit. The audience was no longer silent. Angry murmurs rippled through the crowd as they processed the sheer cruelty of the insult. "That's enough," Mark said, his voice carrying a finality that made everyone in the studio freeze. "You've crossed every line there is to cross. You've insulted our audience, our profession, our work, and now you're making personal attacks on my wife." Harry seemed to realize he had gone too far, but instead of backing down, he doubled down with the desperation of someone watching their reputation crumble in real time. "Personal attacks? I'm stating facts. Neither of you would be anything without television giving you a platform to play pretend as important people." Kelly stepped forward, her movement so swift and purposeful that Harry actually took a step backward. "Play pretend? I've worked 18-hour days for decades. I've earned everything I have through talent, dedication, and treating people with respect. You've earned nothing except a reputation for complaining about a life that millions of people would give anything to have." The truth of her words seemed to hit Harry like arrows finding their target. His face contorted with rage, and when he spoke again, His voice was shrill with desperation. "You don't know anything about my life or what I've sacrificed." "Sacrificed?" Mark's voice rose to match Harry's intensity. "You've sacrificed nothing. You were born into privilege most people can only dream of, and you've spent years complaining about it. Meanwhile, Kelly built something real through hard work and genuine care for people." The audience erupted in spontaneous applause, their support for the hosts overwhelming and unmistakable. The sound seemed to drive Harry into an even deeper fury. He spun around to face the crowd, his composure completely abandoned. "Oh please," he shouted over the applause. "A bunch of housewives and unemployed people who have nothing better to do than watch television all morning. Your opinion means nothing to me." The second insult to their audience was the final straw. The applause stopped instantly, replaced by angry voices from the crowd. People were standing up in their seats, pointing at Harry, their faces showing genuine outrage at his contempt for them. Kelly's voice cut through the chaos like a sword. "Get out!" The two words were spoken quietly, but they carried such authority that the entire studio fell silent again. Harry turned back to face her, his expression showing genuine shock at the command. "Excuse me?" he stammered. "You heard her," Mark said, moving to stand beside his wife in a show of absolute unity. "Get out of our studio. Get off our set. This interview is over." Harry's face cycled through several emotions in rapid succession. Shock gave way to indignation, which transformed into something approaching panic. "You can't kick me off. Do you have any idea who I am?" Kelly's response was swift and merciless. "You're someone who came into our house and insulted our family. You're someone who thinks your title gives you the right to treat people like garbage, and now you're someone who needs to leave." The production crew had recovered from their shock and were now moving with purpose. Security personnel appeared at the edges of the set, their presence making it clear that this was no longer a request, but a demand. Harry looked around desperately, seeming to realize for the first time that he was completely alone in a room full of people who had witnessed his behavior. "This is outrageous. I demand to finish this interview." Mark's laugh was harsh and humorless. "You finished this interview the moment you decided to insult everyone in this room. You've shown your true character, and frankly, it's ugly." "My true character?" Harry's voice reached a pitch that bordered on hysteria. "You don't know anything about my character. I'm trying to make the world a better place while you two are just trying to get ratings." Kelly shook her head slowly, her expression mixing disgust with something that might have been pity. Making the world a better place doesn't start with treating people like servants. It doesn't start with insulting working families. And it certainly doesn't start with thinking you're better than everyone around you. The security personnel were now openly approaching the set. Harry seemed to notice them for the first time, his desperation becoming more apparent with each passing second. "This is a mistake," he said, his voice now pleading rather than commanding. "You're making a huge mistake. Do you know what this will do to your careers?" Mark's response was immediate and devastating. "Our careers will be fine. We built them on treating people with respect and dignity, something you clearly never learned despite all your advantages." Harry's final, desperate attempt came out as a shriek. "I'll make sure everyone knows how you treated me. I'll tell the whole world about this." Kelly's smile was cold as winter. "Please do. Tell everyone how you came on our show and insulted our audience, our crew, and our profession. Tell them how you thought your title meant you could treat working people like garbage. I'm sure that story will work out great for you." The realization of what he had done, and more importantly, what had been recorded, seemed to hit Harry all at once. His face went pale as he understood that his behavior had been captured on camera for millions to see. "You can't air this," he whispered, his earlier arrogance completely evaporated. "You can't show people this interview." Mark's response was final. "We absolutely can, and we absolutely will. You made these choices. You said these words. Now, you get to live with the consequences." Security had reached the set now, their presence making it clear that Harry's time was up. He looked around one final time, seeming to search for any ally in the room, but finding only faces filled with disgust and disappointment. "This isn't over," he said weakly, but even he seemed to know it was an empty threat. Kelly's final words followed him as security began to escort him away. "Yes, at Island, it's completely over, and everyone will see exactly why." The studio doors closed behind Harry with a sound that seemed to echo through the entire building. The set fell silent except for the quiet hum of cameras that had captured every devastating moment. Kelly and Mark stood together, their partnership and professionalism having weathered the storm of one man's spectacular self-destruction. In just 45 seconds of outrageous comments, a guest had revealed his true character and destroyed any sympathy anyone might have had for his complaints about media treatment. The cameras had captured it all, and the world would see exactly who was really entitled, who really showed disrespect, and who really deserved to be kicked off television.